It's open enrollment season, and MediShare is a Christian healthcare sharing ministry that saves most families about $500 a month. Google MediShare and see if it is a fit for you.
It is 6:36, and let's get an update on your morning roads. In the Team Hochberg Traffic Center, here's Jim Talamonte.
CTA Red Line trains have residual delays on the 95th bound side after police activity at 35th. Inbound I-57 traffic is stop and go full stead to the merge. A semi smacked the median wall. This is in the process of clearing, but it's about 22 minutes from I-80 to the right. Be especially careful on ramps and bridges this morning with the temperatures right around freezing and that snow and fog coming down. In fact, we're getting word that the 167th Street Bridge over I-57 is slippery. Indiana Toll Road westbound traffic is slow. Kennedy Avenue to before Calumet Avenue. This is due to a spin out in the right lane. That's traffic. I'm Jim Talamonte on AM 560 The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next in our 1-hour heating and air conditioning weather center. Bit of snow this morning, up to an inch or so. Cloudy, chilly, 43. Clear to partly cloudy, chilly, 32 overnight. Sunshine tomorrow, but increasingly windy and a high of 56. 33 officially at O'Hare. Next news at 7 with breaking news as it happens. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by Real Estate Revealed with Randy Barcella, Sunday mornings starting at 8.
Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Should Trump shut down his task force briefings? Shut him down now. With Freddy Gray, friend of the show. He's a deputy editor over at the Spectator. What do you do when you're in an argument with an impossible child who sees you as the enemy? Do you shout at them until you sound as unreasonable? Do you keep going back to them to hash out the key points? No, you do not engage. You walk away, you leave them to stew in their own rage. All parents know this.
Yep.
Trump is often called childish, petulant, irascible at press conferences. He often is. His pride takes over and he ends up ranting. He takes the bait and the media revels in it. But what the media can't accept or understand is that the president versus media conference dynamic, it's the journalists who play the role of the teenage brat. They goad Trump until he flips, then gloat about how mad he went. It's President Trump who makes the mistake of sinking to their level. That's why he should shut down his press conferences now. 312-642-5600, turnkey.pro answer line. 64636DA, turnkey.pro text line.
Not only do I want that, I mean, I understand it's just every day. We need a break. At least take the weekends off. Please, for the love of all that's holy. And J.B. Pritzker, he should do the same thing. It's you're beating, I mean, every day it's boom, boom, boom. And they're not giving us any valuable information. They're just scaring us. This is many cases that we have, and this is how many people died. But in Trump's case, I mean, it's a different beast. But right, I agree with Freddy Gray. I mean, why? It's the same arguments. It's the same stupid questions. And every reporter in that room is trying to have a look at me moment. Look what I just did moment. So don't feed the beast. Just do it, every other day or maybe 2 or 3 times a week. What do you think?
I completely disagree.
You think it should be every day? Completely
disagree. I think on balance, the task force briefings are a positive. I think they do go on too long. He indulges the press too much. But I appreciate why he errs on the side of indulging them too much, because it's basically a sop to transparency. I sat there for an hour and a half and took all their questions until they were in their 8th iteration of the same questions they had asked in the first 20 minutes. But hey, this is your media. This is your press. This is your choice. Who is being a more honest broker? Who is outcome-oriented? And who, as Freddie Gray writes, who is the teenage brat who doesn't want to do anything productive, just wants his or her way, doesn't matter, and won't listen to reason, fact, or anything else. Because I'll tell you what, you shut down the briefings, then you defang the president's bully pulpit. No one has used the bully pulpit like he has. It's not 100% positive from my perspective. Maybe it varies day to day. Some days it's 60, some days it's closer to 80. But that's a pretty good value prop, 60 to 80% net positive on a daily basis. And I'm just, the bottom line is, forget the percentages. It is advancing the flag. It's advancing the flag by taking the D.C. press corps flag. And remember, it's not just Trump there. You can't just remember the moments where he says you're a disgrace. You have to remember the full context. And people are watching it in context, even if the press wants to amplify the exchanges with individual members of the media. And that context includes Tony Fauci, includes Dr. Deborah Birx. It includes impressive members of the military or FEMA who are the supply chain to the states, providing details and answering questions in detail. There is actually a lot of value-added information there. And when Trump rolls out, for example, his reopening plan, as he did yesterday, it's very helpful to have a guy that the press has elevated to Mount Olympus there to basically say, this three-phase plan makes sense, Tony Fauci.
Fact mitigation works. You saw the charts that the vice president and that Dr. Birx put up. It worked. And what we hope, and I believe we will be successful, if we carefully do this, again, with the attention to the safety and health of the American public, that we will be able to. It will be staggered. Not every state, not every region is going to do it at the same time. That's clearly obvious because of the varied dynamics of the outbreak. But we feel confident that sooner or later, we will get to the point, hopefully sooner, with safety as the most important thing, to a point where we can get back to some form of normality. The one thing I liked about it that Dr. Birx said so well is that no matter what phase you're in, there are certain fundamental things that we've done that are not like it was in September and October. You want to call it the new normal, you can call it whatever you want. But even if you are in phase 1, 2, 3, it's not okay, game over. It's not. It's going to be a way that we protect ourselves because, as we know, and as I've said from this podium, it may very well be, as we go the cycle around, that there'll be this virus that wants to come back to us. I think we're going to be able to handle that.
I think we're going to be able to handle that, and basically an endorsement of the phases, of course, which he was instrumental in cobbling together. And so thinking about that, while Trump is fielding incoming from Pelosi and Biden and the usual suspects, Tony Fauci, who is suspicious in a lot of conservative circles too,
right?
Well, but boy, doesn't he undermine the left's hysteria. You can't at the same time say, listen to Tony Fauci, and then say, don't listen to Tony Fauci when he disagrees with me for political reasons. That's a difficult argument to make out. And for people to say, well, just have the press conference like Dan Henninger, have the press briefings just with like the doctors and Pence and the supply chain people and Pence, and Trump can do his own thing. It doesn't work that way. No. Trump needs to be seen with that group. He is the commander-in-chief. He is writing point on this. This is his task force, ultimately. And he needs to be seen interacting and complimenting as they are complimenting him.
All right, you're changing my mind.
E-M-E-N-T-I-N-G, not I-M-E-N-T-I-N-G. Complimenting. In other words, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts together. For more on this, reluctant as I am to disagree, we're pleased to be joined by Freddy Gray, deputy editor of the Spectator, editor of Spectator USA, and host of the Americano podcast. Freddie, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
good to be with you. I've just heard you devastate my argument. So I don't know where to begin.
Exactly. All right. Thank you for joining us, Freddie Gray. No, I'm kidding. So I did lay out your argument, sort of the thesis of your argument, and I disagree with it for some of probably what you heard me saying, but go ahead and cobble, go ahead and I should say respond to what I cobbled together.
Well, when that piece got posted, I got quite a lot of stick online from people saying I was sort of parroting CNN. But I mean, the piece, which you've obviously read, so thank you, is actually saying, the pathetic party here are the media, and I don't think Trump should get into these Punch and Judy games with them. I said Punch and Judy, which I think translates into American, even though it maybe is more of a British thing.
Yes, we receive you. Yes, you're coming in.
It's a sort of puppet show thing. And I mean, I think that the briefings are important, and of course it's important that in a crisis a commander-in-chief is seen to be front and center. But I think they should certainly change the format and not allow these absurd kind of spats between journalists and Trump, which were kind of funny for a while, but have already got quite boring even without the crisis. And now with the crisis, they seem kind of tragic, really, I think.
Well,
and as for Fauci...
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
To not say Punch and Judy again, but there's a sort of strange Laurel and Hardy routine going on between Trump and Fauci in which they do complement each other in this strange way. But again, it's the way that I'd say a weak point with the Trump presidency is that everything becomes a kind of TV show. It takes on that reality TV show dynamic that's discussed a lot. And while that is quite entertaining to a lot of people, it does start to wear people down, I think, in a crisis, and I think that might be reflected in some of the polling we're seeing on his job approval rating.
Well, there's one other thing, too, that gets through at the task force briefings that wouldn't otherwise get through, just information that even if it's reported very quietly. It's not given the amplification that because it doesn't redound to the detriment of Trump. So, for example, questioning some of what the recommendations have been and questioning what some governors have done. We have studies now, both from Germany as well as China, and this is consistent. I spoke with Robert Verbruggen over at National Review last evening, consistent with what they're seeing in New York, too, that the incidence of transmission outside is almost non-existent. It is infinitesimal. Any evidence that of coronavirus transmission outdoors, and yet you have all these shelter-in-place orders. And point of fact, what you find is infections of 3 or more are overwhelmingly occurring in closed-in spaces, like people, large numbers of people, families sheltering in space, and that's where you get the viral load, to borrow the phrase. And it's not when you're on a golf course or jogging along the lakefront in Chicago or in a park with your kid or on and on and on. And so some of what actually is included here should be challenged, and some of the orders that these governors have given at the state level should be challenged, at least based on, there's this word, science.
Well, I totally agree with you there. I think the media has gone from bad to worse to atrocious in recent weeks. I mean, I thought the New York Times burying that DHS study about how the infection had spread much more and therefore lethality was lower, and that's a government study that it put at the bottom of its story because the top of the story was sort of bashing Trump. I think we've seen so much of this, and it's just this pathetic inability of journalists, and I'm guilty of it too, but I try and resist it, of just putting everything through the same stupid filter or funnel of pro-Trump versus anti-Trump, or woke or not woke, whereas there's much more important stuff happening here, and people you don't have to be a scientist to just try and report what scientists are saying, and I think a lot of people are failing there quite badly.
Mr. Gray, I loved your article about Confessions of a COVID-19 Truther, because I'm one of you. Denial is a common defense mechanism, and I'm, every day I have an experience with that of, like, is this really happening? Is this true? And I say that because they are padding some numbers, 3,700 who they just presumed that they died from COVID-19 when they didn't even check.
Well, yes, I am. I do have moments of COVID skepticism, but then, as I try and say, I'm not a scientist, so I try and not have strong opinions about this. I mean, that piece was meant to be funny. It upset quite a few people, which has led me to believe that one of the common symptoms of this virus is the loss of the sense of humour, as well as smell.
As well as smell. But before we
Don't forget taste.
Before we let you go, since you're across the pond in merry old England, update us on Boris Johnson as well as how the UK is combating the virus. What's the state of play is there?
Well, Boris, as your listeners probably aware, has made a pretty good recovery, but I think it's sort of becoming clearer now quite how close he was to dying. And I think it was very, very touch and go. And there's a lot of speculation about what treatment was used to save him. We don't actually know much at the moment.
Interesting.
But generally, the government's just announced that it will be carrying on the lockdown for 3 weeks. I think people are getting very, very frustrated because there's no end plan. And as my boss, my editor, said in an article in the Telegraph this morning, the secret about the government's end game is that there is no secret to the government's end game. They just don't really know what to do. And a worry connected to that is that Boris isn't there. He's got to recuperate for a month at least. And his government without him is not the best, I think it's fair to say. I think they're doing okay under very difficult circumstances. But there aren't any really charismatic leaders, and this is a time when you need charismatic leaders. I mean, if you tried to imagine the Trump administration without Trump, that would probably give you a fair reflection of what the Boris Johnson administration without Boris is like.
Interesting. He is Freddy Gray, deputy editor of The Spectator, editor for Spectator USA, host of the Americano podcast. Freddy, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Great pleasure.
Take care.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning